Hey, thanks for stopping by. So, can you believe that Christmas is next Wednesday? Because I can't.
It's too fast. It's
It
too fast.
when I texted you about coming on, and we made these plans, that felt like last week. I don't know how it's already 5 days before Christmas.
It's I'm surprised. I didn't even realize it was 5 days before Christmas.
Yeah, it's just wild. And thankfully, what's nice is my mom had the conversation with us, being like, "Hey, you guys kind of buy stuff for yourself anyway. Like, do we have to do gifts this year? Can't we just have a nice dinner and not worry about getting anybody anything?" And that was music to my ears because I'm like, "Yes, I don't have to worry about shopping. I don't have to get stuff. I don't know what your family does or if you have
It's
to
the
go like
same thing. I
crazy."
usually ask them, okay, what do you want for Christmas? It's probably gonna come after Christmas, and then I order it.
My sister would be the most into it. She's actually really into it right now. She put up the tree. She's been doing all this DIY crafting where she's making like bows and stuff to put on a tree and everything. So she's been doing all this stuff, but she in the past would be the big one into the gifts, and she would literally give you like a shopping list being like, "So you're gonna get me this, so and so's gonna get me that." And I'm like, "Well, I can't get you that because that's a little bit out of my price range at the moment." Um, so yeah, I can't believe that the holidays are already upon us. I mean, you have to, do you have to work the holidays or are you
I
working New
am working
Year's?
the holidays.
You are, right?
Yeah, both New Year's and Christmas.
Oh my God. Well, don't you get like a lot of exciting stories from like working the holidays and like EMS?
Exciting stories and annoying stories. It's one of those things where it's just like more of you'd rather be at home than to say the stories.
You'd rather be at home reading Hellboy.
I'd rather be at home reading Hellboy.
There we go. So with that, I'm gonna jump into our intro script here, which this is episode number 3. And as I will probably be saying for the first few episodes, I do not have anything memorized yet. And so here we go. Hello there, and thank you so much for visiting your local comic, Sean. I'm Sean, and today Charles has stopped by to talk Hellboy, the Crooked Man, both the comic miniseries and the 2024 film that just came out, like, I don't know, a few weeks ago. If this is your first time listening or watching, visiting your local comic, Sean is a podcast where we normally talk comics in a book club style format. The titles Guess and I are reading can be found on my socials at Local Comic Sean, well ahead of new episodes discussing them, and new episodes drop every Monday at midnight. For audio listeners, this podcast can be found on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and SoundCloud. For those who prefer video, the podcast can also be found on YouTube. Please feel free to follow or subscribe on your platforms of choice. If you like the show and want to support it, I encourage you to subscribe to our Patreon. Subscribing gives you the opportunity to see behind the scenes content, learn how the podcast gets made, and or gain access to resources for both reading and digital creation. Thank you to all who subscribe to this show in any way, shape, or form. I truly appreciate it. Without further ado, let's get started and talk Hellboy. I gotta be honest, I think that's my best one, and like I was tripping a little bit.
Congratulations, very good, very
Thank you.
professional.
So Charles, how are you doing this lovely evening?
I am doing fantastic, doing great. Stayed up all day, did some last minute, shopping, all the
Mm.
gifts and all that stuff. But
So
besides
are
that,
you almost done with the Christmas shopping then?
oh, I've been done. Everything is now on shipping, ordering. Anything that I had to get is already got.
Mm.
Now it's just waiting.
Nice. So we obviously have known each other for a little bit. We used to work at the now going out of business Party City. Rest in peace. So I know a bit about you, but I actually don't know how many comics or what kinds of comics you have really read. So why don't you tell me a little bit about how familiar you are with comics, what kind of universes you're into, and if you've read any comics before now.
I have read not really the mainstream stuff like DC and Marvel. Usually I've read stuff like like the Rocketeer, Serenity, Firefly, that kind of things. I mostly focus on like Dark Horse, which is Hellboy's like Hellboy.
And you're into Umbrella Academy, so that's where that
Umbrella
also
Academy
was.
as well. Yeah, that's a really good one. That's
What'd
usually
you
what
think of
my
the final season?
I have not watched it because the season
Oh,
before that one got me really upset. It got
why
me
did it get
really
you
upset.
upset?
It's just because it just started getting into a whole bunch of other things that really veered off from the comic books. It just
Yeah, I imagine.
and
I haven't read the comics yet, but I know when I do, it's going to be a very different.
the first one season, the best one. Second season, you saw the changes, but it was like okay, TV. Third one,
I thought three was fun. However, the last season I think is horrible.
you can tell in season three that it's gonna get rushed on the fourth one, and that's why I'm like really reluctant to it because kind of like, do I want to tarnish what good memories I had?
Hmm. So what other like Dark Horse comics and stories have you like read previously in addition to like Umbrella Academy?
Oh yeah, Umbrella Academy, Hellboy. I mean, some other things. I've had Rocket Raccoon. I've read as well. That's mostly Marvel.
Hmm.
The Rocketeer. Some of the issues, but besides that, not a lot of other comic books.
So you were the one that said when we were like, all right, what can we talk about for like a first episode between the two of us? You were like, well, we could do Umbrella Academy or we could do Hellboy. I have a lot of Hellboy comics. How many trades for Hellboy do you have? You said you had omnibuses. Do you have them all?
I don't have them all. I mean, on the side, I've got Hellboy. This many. I've got this one over here, and I got the full one that my friend got because he knows
Oh my
all these.
God. Box
Yeah,
set right there.
I've got them all. So besides that, they just
Have you read them all, or is it one of those things where it's like, all right, they're on my bookshelf, I'll get to them?
I've read a large portion of them, but I stopped. Then my friend got me the whole omnibus, and I started reading them again because one of them I didn't realize I bought out of order. Then I just
Mm,
continued reading it from there, but I have not finished them on not yet.
gotcha. Yeah, no, because I mean, my bookshelf over here, I there's a number of things that I have not actually like read through or finished. It's like the decorative thing. One day I'm gonna have to like sit down one summer and like just pick everything up and be like, all right, I haven't read this, I haven't read this, let me just bang them all out. Um, okay, so we are looking today at Hellboy the Crooked Man, which was a three-issue miniseries that got published in 2008. It was written by Mike Mignola, with art by, I believe it was Richard Corben. Um, Went for three issues between around the summer. And it is the inspiration for the recent Hellboy movie, which they just came out with this year. That I remember when the news broke about this movie, I was still working at the newspaper, and the news broke that they had finished filming a Hellboy movie, and the reaction was kind of like, "Wait, hold on, we didn't even know a Hellboy movie was in development. Like we didn't know there was another Hellboy reboot because, we had the two movies with Ron Perlman and then we had the reboot with David Harbour. There was no news about this movie until, by the way, it's done filming. And I feel like the reaction very much was, wait, they managed to film a whole Hellboy movie in secret? And knowing the story of the Crooked Man now, it very much makes sense how they were able to film this movie in secret. So, Charles, why don't you give us a bit of a play-by-play of the three-issue miniseries and kind of give us start to finish what happens?
We start off with Hellboy going off into the middle of like nowhere, the Appalachian Mountains, Virginia. He's walking around. He sees he legit walks into one of the cabins. It doesn't really give you any synopsis besides that, how he gets in there. Um Automatically off the boot, just hits him with uh somebody passed out, knocked out with a witch ball. Gives you some brief synopsis on that one as well. Um you got somebody just came out of again, you just get hit with a bunch of new characters. Hellboy tends to have like loose based, like you just get Hellboy as the main character. You have the main stories and everything like that. All these characters tend to be new in the comic book at least, and movie is a little bit different. Um you have well, sorry about that. Uh give a little Tom comes in, gives you a little backstory of that, how he was like cursed or blessed or something like that from another witch. Um, he gives him your whole backstory, how he survived the war, was scared of the devil, how he met the Crooked Man, which is a whole issue on itself. How you have to like skin the bone of a cat, throw in and boil, and
It's very like, okay, this is a witchcraft story.
yeah,
Because
it hits you with a whole bunch of stuff. It just
yeah,
throws you into this whole like
do you like
no.
that approach in comics? Because I actually really liked how we just jump in, like, and the story gets going.
It does throw you into that. It does kind of give you the whole like synopsis of okay, this is how the world is. This is how it's supposed to be, and everyone's kind of like okay with it. Hellboy is this presence, and everyone's just okay with him being over there.
They're not scared by him, yeah, because at this, like, I know, so context, the only Hellboy I really know, like, this is the first Hellboy comic I've read. I had seen the first Ron Perlman movie, have not seen The Golden Army, haven't seen the sequel, and I also haven't seen the David Harbour reboot. Now so the only movies I've seen is the first Ron Perlman one and now this recent one. Um, but, I know of how, like, Hellboy was, like, a myth, or also, like, he was in they say in this like, oh, you were in Life magazine, like we know of you. So like people aren't afraid of him as like the monster here. But like you said, this story just kind of picks up with Hellboy's in the middle of nowhere. He just completed like a mission. He says he completed a mission down south, and he's like, yeah, so now I'm just kind of wandering. And
It's
he's
very hard to like throw you into it, like give you a synopsis because, like you said, it just starts you off in
yeah,
okay, he's here.
yeah. And he's investigating basically the death of, not a death, but somebody has been affected by witchcraft. And that's when, who you mentioned, Tom Farrell, who I would argue is more the protagonist in this book than Hellboy. Like, Hellboy really just feels along for the ride. Because, like he said, he's wandering. So he's like, all right, I'll deal with this because, I'm used to these things. I'll help you out. And so um, Tom Farrell shows up, and right off the bat, what would you say is like your first impression of Tom with how he interacts with like the situation going on?
If you ever read like you said, if you haven't really read Hellboy comics, you always get these characters that like join in. You get this sense of all right, how is he A going to die or B end up being a demon or a something in disguise, and so you kind of get this feeling of okay, how is he going to screw Hellboy over? And it's as you can progress on, you're like okay, cool, you get this backstory, but you already automatically get this sense of all right, I'm kind of weary of is he gonna have a happy ending? I don't think he's gonna have a happy ending. That's how I met with Tom.
Yeah, and I could see how you would have that suspicion because right off the bat, he knows a good amount about witchcraft. And he
Too
just kind of
much.
starts jumping into it like, yeah, so you're gonna want to do this to break the spell. Found the witch ball in the stairs. Clearly something's going on here. Um, and then we move forward. So they say that the name of the witch that they believe hexed the person is Cora Fisher. And Tom is like, well, hold on. I knew Cora Fisher when I was growing up here because you find out he left for about 15 years and then now he's come back home. And he goes, when I knew Cora Fisher, we were young and she wasn't a witch. So I don't know what's going on here. And so him and Hellboy go off to Cora Fisher's house, and what happens, Charles?
You see that he what is it, Hellboy or one of them, Tom finds the skin of Effie. No, was it Effie? Cora, sorry. She
Cora.
finds the skin of Cora, and just Raccoon comes up, goes right in. Turns out to be like that's who she is. This whole demonic witch thing finds a little demon devil that she made, a little moth in a jar.
Yeah, it's a familiar, which at least from what I understand of familiars, because I'm not well versed in witchcraft. I would hope I'm not. Um, but like at least from what I would gather from, I don't know, Supernatural, or I think familiars were also in the Golden Compass, from what I remember when I watched that movie. Basically,
Yeah,
it's like an animal that has like some type of attachment to like
it's
the
like the
the
source of
person.
power, I'm
Yeah.
guessing.
And so in this, they say like the familiar is basically like a demon animal connected to the person. Um, and
Finds
so
the
yeah,
source of all the witch balls. Turns
hers
out
was like
that
a
Tom had
beetle or
relations.
something with wings. And yeah, so what's her face? Cora Fisher, she has become a witch and she shapeshifts. So I guess she turns into a raccoon but has to leave her skin. And when she comes back and wants to be herself again, the raccoon goes into the skin and she turns back into herself. Um, and I kind of like how a lot of this book is Hellboy's just rolling with it. Like he's not like, wow, that's disturbing. He's just kind of like, all right.
Because look
Like
at him. It's
he's
reading
just on the
Hellboy and all
ride.
that
I
stuff
like
is
that.
exactly. It's just so. It's such a good way of describing it. He's just so nonchalant about it.
Yeah.
Everything that's kind of happened around him is like, all right, I guess this is happening now.
Yeah.
So reading it, you just get into this whole like, all right, this is the world. This is what you see, and everyone kind of reacts to it in a sense of like unease, but acceptance to what's happening around them makes it
Mhm.
so much better.
Yeah, and I like that nonchalant because like, and we'll get into this when we talk about the movie, but I feel like a lot of Hellboy, expectation is that he's going to be quipping and he's kind of got that gruff, I don't care personality. But in this, I didn't get I don't care or like irritability. I just kind of got, all right, this is what we're doing. We're rolling with this because like there's even that moment with Tom. So coming up, so they meet Cora, and Tom starts talking to Cora, and they basically he gets some information out of her by saying, "Hey, what took you down this road?" And she explains that she did get married. She married her husband. Her husband unfortunately died, and so did their children. So she kind of just turned to witchcraft because she had nothing else. Um, and at that point, who shows up to the house, Charles?
Well, as the name of the book suggests, the Crooked Man.
No, not the Crooked Man, Charles.
Oh shoot, I'm getting oh no, shoot. That's right. Effie Cop comes up with
Yeah.
riding a pale horse.
Yes. And you are right, because technically this is collected in the trade Hellboy the Crooked Man and The Return of Effie Cobb, which is the sequel that we have not read yet.
Not yet.
But so what happens when Effie shows up?
So she rides the horse, starts taunting Tom, saying how like this is what you wanted. This is the power of exactly. This is how you went through the spells, made a deal with us. And when she gets off, she leaves a gift, which is the horse. Turns out the horse is his dad. So the horse is like shave ships back to his dad. His dad is like, "Oh no, I'm surprised you're back. Like you this is the last time I'm seeing you." Dies in his hands.
Yeah, I love how like out of context that sounds. It's just like,
It,
yeah, it's his dad. His dad's the horse.
if you read exactly, it's
Yeah.
Hellboy. When you read it, he just
For
Hellboy's in the back of it.
Yeah, for the context, Effie Cobb was like, so when Tom was 15, Effie was basically just this witch girl in the woods. And, it's implied that they kind of developed a relationship, and Tom started getting into witchcraft because of Effie, like convincing him to go along with it. He, in getting into witchcraft, boiled a dead cat to get like the bones. And when he got the bone, he was told by Effie that whatever bone he's holding when the devil appears to like give him power or whatnot, that's gonna be like his lucky bone or whatnot. And he holds this one bone, and that's when the Crooked Man shows up, which is basically it's explained. So Tom at one point, I think it's while they're waiting for Cora to come back to the house as like a raccoon, is he explains like, yes, I did witchcraft with Effie, um, and the Crooked Man is like this story that there was this guy who He was basically this rich guy that would play both sides of wars, whether it's like the Revolutionary War, etc. He would be like both for the British, both for the Americans, but he would also be selling like to colonists as well as Native Americans, and basically just trying to profit off of everybody suffering. But then one day he got hung, and he got sent down to hell, but then hell sent him back basically as like this demonic force to continue preying on people. And so
Every soul he gets a penny.
yeah, he like basically like treats souls as currency, and Effie worships him, not the devil. So technically, Tom made a deal with him when he like got this lucky bone and whatnot. And something that I forgot, which is like it's a small line at the start, but then it plays more weight. Like you said, the dad shows up, and Effie basically had him in like a horse form or whatever because of like some snare that was on him that was magic.
The
I forgot that when
bridle.
Tom first showed up, um, his he one of his some of his first words, he's like, "All right, well, I've been gone for 15 years because I've basically been running from the Crooked Man since I didn't want anything to do with him after I first saw him. I went to war and all this stuff, so I guess I better go say hi to my mom." And the people that he sees are kind of like, your mom's dead." And he goes, "Oh, what about my dad?" And they're like, "We have not seen your dad in forever." And so you basically come to the realization when he shows up as, well, a horse, that his dad has basically been imprisoned by Effie as a horse for all this time, just kind of getting tortured. Um,
Riding him real long and hard.
yes, that's the word she uses, which was disturbing to read on the page, even more disturbing to hear in the movie. Um, and so after that, what happens? What does Tom decide once his dad passes away, once he turns back into himself?
From there, he decides to make amends. He's got to carry the weight. Even Hellboy's like, listen, I can carry him for you if you want me to. He's like, nah, this is my sin to bear. I got to bury him in some sacred ground. That's what the next scene is. He starts walking towards with now Cora's with him. This is now a
Hmm.
trio. They all have to go to sacred ground now, which is
So they're
like the
going to a
local
church up the hill.
church up the hill, which is what we're going to see from there.
What's the
Uh,
problem with the church up the hill, though?
Not even problem really. It's just more of
It's
all
on
the
the crooked man's territory.
yeah. If you can see, if you can say that, it's just you can see the witches when they pass by. It's just sacred ground, so that there's this like whole thing behind it, which goes into more stories of all that. It just exactly veers off to different points. Reading it very nonchalant, walking through, you can see all the witches, telling more about his story, expecting his soul. Tom is expecting his soul to be thrown in to hell, but he never used his bone, is what he keeps saying. At least he never believes he used his bone. How he survived the war, he believes he never used a bone. It's that's the whole like focus of what he's trying to like, I guess, convince himself that there's still hope, because he keeps saying like how I survived the war. This is the reason why everything's happening. This is the reason for his power. So now he just goes up to the hill. He's carrying the weight. Side note, another thing that I like to mention as well is how Hellboy even said that he's not the devil, and even Tom was like, "Listen, I know you're not the devil because I actually met him," which was
Hmm.
the Crooked Man.
And I liked how supportive Hellboy was in the comic, where, there's that moment you mentioned of how he's carrying his father up to get buried in the church. And Hellboy's like, I could help you, I could carry him for a while. And he's like, no, this is my thing to bear. But I also liked how I think I want to say it was when they were first leaving the house with Cora and like carrying the father. And he goes, I'm going to bring him up to the church to get buried. Would you come with me? And Hellboy's like, I wouldn't miss it. Because again, Hellboy's just kind of there for the ride. Like, I'm with you. I'm going to help you with this one. And so they get to the church. The priest is there. It's his church, but like nobody goes to that church anymore. It's kind of like the priest is just living by himself. And they get inside. Along the way, though, Cora explodes into a bunch of bugs that they then have to like fight off of themselves. And that's when Tom panics and accidentally uses the wishing bone to get them out of that situation. So now he's like, all right, if I didn't sell my soul before, I definitely have done it now because now I've used the wishing bone. And so they get to the church, they meet the priest. Cora's ghost is there. The priest has been talking to her, so he knows what's going on. And then while they're in the church, they get surrounded by Effie and all the Crooked Man's witches and servants. And that's when the Crooked Man shows up. And basically, I will say, I love the Crooked Man's dialogue and just how he's taunting them for like a whole issue, just being like, "All right, you're gonna give me what I want, right? Like,
I
just get
love
out
how
here."
visceral he looks too. Just
Yeah.
this whole time, this big-headed man with
Mhm.
his head tilted over, just constantly taunting them from outside.
I liked the one, blank eye and the yellow eye to the left. And I really like I will say the artwork by who is it? Richard Corben was just so good in this miniseries. Like it kind of had that Sandman feel to me where it was very like it matched the tone so well where like it didn't have to be like hyper realistic. It kind of had some creativity to it. So, there was some, I guess, leeway there in terms of like how they could present the characters and everything. Like I know Tom has a very long face. Um, and I really loved the coloring. It just really gave me that, horror vibe, which I don't get in a lot of books that I read because a lot of the stuff I read is like, you know, I would say Marvel, DC, but then also like even The Walking Dead, like it's a black and white book, but it's more of like a noir, not noir, but it's more of like your zombie
It's got
story.
a
It's
gritty feel to it.
yeah, it's got a real feel to it. Hellboy had more of that horror supernatural, and I think the artwork really sold that.
The artist as well, he worked for it's a very not really a I was gonna say it's an adult comic, heavy metal. So he has like a little bit of controversy. He also did a thing about Punisher too. So you kind of get the feeling of what this is, what type of artist he is. So
Hmm.
this like darker but more adult, more mature themed
Now,
styling to it.
our Hellboy comics are more aimed at like older adult audiences, right?
Definitely. I'm just
It's
saying
not
it's just
it's
more
not like for 14-year-olds or anything. Like it's marketed as like it would be TVMA, if you will.
it's more like it's got that cell shading to it. So you got that like darker things are in the shadows, the emphasis on the eyes, as compared to this one, which has a lot more detail and a
Hmm.
lot visceral. You can tell the difference from the original art compared to this one. So you get that feeling of visceral, grotesque, really images of the face. The when you said that when she explodes into that
Yeah, that was
bunch of
gross.
insects and
She
everything, they
balloons up in that one panel.
yeah, and all
Ugh.
the centipedes and the worst kind of stuff, and viscera and gore and all that kind of stuff. You don't really get that on the normal comics, but this one they kind of make that emphasis on like grotesque, the nature of the details, like his face. What is it? The crooked man's face. You can see he's always drooling. That one, like
Hmm.
you said, the one blank eye. He's always got his head tilted. The base Hellboy comics tend to focus more, like I said, the shadows, dark shadows, outlines. Blood smears tend to be like black on red. Very
Hmm.
much emphasis on the action. This one, smaller details. It's refreshing, but also grotesque in
Yeah.
nature.
Yeah. And like, so then this book was really like, it's a 3-issue miniseries, so it was a very straightforward plot because once they get surrounded by the Crooked Man, he then basically starts raising the dead and toying with them, their emotions, and basically sends an army of the undead to fight them. The priest uses the wishing bone to turn the shovel that dug the graves for all that dead into basically a weapon that Hellboy can use against the Crooked Man. Hellboy delivers the killing blow, but the Crooked Man's not done yet. So after they bury Tom's father, they go all the way up the mountain to the Crooked Man's home, and they kind of find what's left of him. And he's, like you said, us. This is where you really get the grotesque and visceral stuff. Is like his true form or demonic form is like this giant bug or bugs together and everything. And that's where Tom kind of has the last, uh, not laugh, but that last, all right, I'm done with you. And he takes the wishing bone, tosses it on him. The guy turns to dust, and all of his coins that are supposed to represent souls just kind of disappear. And I like how they left the ending open because Tom asks, he goes, so if all the coins disappeared, did they all get freed or did he drag them all down to hell with him? And Hellboy's response is kind of like, I can't really tell you. I don't know. And I like that they left that open. Um, and that's pretty much the mini series. So, with that in mind, what did you think about the book as a whole, Charles? Like the mini series?
I like I said, it's a good different outlook of how like Hellboy is in different areas, how the world kind of expects it. He's there, different from the movies. I watched the movies first, so you just get this whole different outlook of okay, this is life. This is supernatural's kind of more common than you think. Different outtake on it. It's a refreshing look. Refreshing. Yeah.
I like that it was a smaller scale threat because I feel like, based on the first movie, it was like, okay, we have to stop, what was it, like Rasputin or somebody, like some
If
immortal
you watch the movies, it's a
person.
whole bigger
we
thing.
we
And
have to stop like these giant monsters from coming through the portal. And I like that this was kind of just that small, like, guy goes in to deal with some supernatural threat story, doesn't quite know what's going on, discovers this evil, has to help deal with it type thing. I like that it wasn't a big multiverse or universe ending threat or world ending. Like it was just kind of like, oh, all right, we got a small town with a mystery. What's happening here? Not even a small town. It's literally they're in the middle of the woods. There's like a house maybe every few
two,
miles.
three houses.
Yeah, it's got like that, Pennsylvania in the mountains feel. Well, they're in the Appalachian Mountains, so that would make sense, wouldn't it, Sean? Um, but yeah, I dug this book. What did you especially like about it, Charles, and what did you maybe not like?
I like the more emphasis on like more folklore kind of adds into it. Same as you said, not as big, life threatening. Mostly focuses on like the guy on the crossroads, the witch balls, these kind of smaller details that emphasizes and brings light, brings what's it expands on their world, not like Nazis and this and that, and you have big mountains and nah, it's just I don't know. You remember that one little part in the book where it's like, here, do you want to know how to make a witch ball? Well, this is what you got to do.
Yes. And that was like a bit at first I jumped to it and I went, did I skip a page accidentally? Like, is this like a random insert? And then I think it was just to give you that little bit of a page break, almost like an advertisement in a book. Like I think that was just meant to give you I think they did that for fun. I don't think that was meant to really enhance the plot. I think in because I like to think about it in print. In print, you're going to have those advertisements. So I feel like they threw that in to be like a one-page advertisement of like, hey kids, you'll want to know how to make a witch ball? And then it gives you that whole thing. What was crazy to me is that they also did that in the movie, which we'll
I
get into. Um, is there anything you disliked about the miniseries?
What I kind of disliked was just more of not. I didn't really dislike anything too much about it. It good contracting art style, quick and short, which I like about these Hellboy things. Very one-offs kind of ordeal. Um, Nothing that I really had to focus on that I didn't really like. I kind of left the one big thing that I liked was towards the end where it gave you that where you saw the priest and what's her face? What was her name again? I keep forgetting her name. Not Effie,
Cora?
Cora. you see them in the background and both of their eyes have the glow to it, so you didn't even know if they were really, if the priest was alive to begin with. Is he a ghost? Is he this?
Ooh, I didn't notice that.
Yeah,
I
if you
I know the panel you're talking about. It's when Hellboy and Tom go up to the mansion, right? And the priest is kind of just standing there in the graveyard with Cora's like silhouette next to him. Ooh, I didn't notice that. Let me look at that.
yeah, if you like I said, Mike Mignola has that emphasis on eyes. So I'm wondering if he imitated if this artist imitated that one little section of, hey, by the way, was he there to actually help them out in the first place? Was he really alive? Because remember what they said, the church was derelict, kind of abandoned, and the crooked man was kind of incentivizing him. Exactly. You see, yes, he's supposed to be a blind man, but the way he's standing there, maybe it's supposed to be the contrast. Yeah, he's got the shadow, but was he supposed to? Is he not a supernatural being to begin with as
Hmm.
well? Maybe that's what I liked about it.
That see, I didn't interpret it that way. I was just like, okay, Cora's spirit is still there, but if that's what you're saying about Mike Mignola and eyes and like, how he kind of tells expressions, I like that interpretation.
It's yeah, I can see. Yeah, it's so good. It's such a good focus on it. It's a little good callback to it. Maybe it's just to show that he's blind, but at the same time, why would the blind guy's eyes be its emphasis in that last panel?
Well, that's why I like, especially, and I don't know if they've released it for like this book, but that's why I like when they do like director's cuts and stuff of comic issues where you can read the script and see like the intent behind each panel. Like there are some things that like I wouldn't notice before until I read the script. I'd be like, oh, that's really interesting that that was an intentional choice right there. Because like same with like when I'm watching TV, like I'll watch, when I was watching Breaking Bad and I was watching Better Call Saul, I would look up like the scripts online so I could kind of get some insight and tell you a little bit more about like what Walter's thinking, what Saul's thinking, etc. Um, but yeah, I don't think I really disliked anything about this book. I think it was a solid read. It was a quick read, and I just felt like I was along for the ride, like Hellboy. Just really, it's Tom's story, and we're seeing how this guy kind of gets out of this deal he didn't mean to make, but he made. Um,
That would have to be one thing that I dislike, that you actually found a character that has a fleshed out story, and yeah, you have a beginning and end, but like you get this big story and that's it. He's gone. That's his story, and
yeah,
bye.
honestly, Tom was, even though he is the protagonist, he was probably my favorite character in this book because I really feel like he had a lot of personality. He did most of the talking. Hellboy was mostly responding to him. Like Hellboy would just be like crap or something when like something exploded or whatnot, like when the zombies are coming in. Meanwhile, Tom was kind of the one dealing with everything. Although there's not a lot of characters in this book for me to ask you like who was your favorite character, but I do feel like they all stand out. Like even the priest really stood out to me. Like
He's
all
my
of
favorite
his,
character.
he was your favorite character. Why was he your favorite character? I think I know
He
why.
it's mostly because he survived, honestly.
In the
A
book.
lot of yeah, and exactly. That's anyway. In the book, in the comic book, he survived. It's like I said, when you see Hellboy, you tend to have these issues of how is he gonna die? When is he gonna die? That kind of ordeal, which is why I'm like surprised, like this. Okay, this guy who kind of resisted every temptation that the crooked man threw to him, like here's your eyes back, here's your youth back, here's this. He still fought it, and
That's
then he, in
that's why
the
I
end,
liked him. I liked that he was even like, Lord, take away my sight. I don't want any gifts from the devil. Like, I really thought it was going to go the route of, after he keeps sending stuff his way, the priest would finally like kind of crack or snap or get killed in some way like you were expecting. But I think it became a lot more interesting when he does reject everything, and he kind of saves the day by passing the torch to Hellboy.
he was the technically the straight man out of everybody. Tom was trying to give into it. He kind of snapped him out of it. He was the one who confirmed that, listen, Cora's soul is still here with me. He might have taken her body, but he didn't take his soul. he kind of was there to support everybody. And in the end, like I said, was he really alive to begin with? Maybe not. Maybe he is this otherworld being, but he made it through. He eyes still there. He's still alive. He made it
in the
through
book.
in the book.
In the book. Um, so what was your favorite moment or piece of dialogue? Did you take note of anything?
No, like you said, it was that one big section where uh we already said it. Crooked Man tries to tempt the priest. The priest kept rejecting everything that was being thrown at him. Promise of love, his eyes, his youth, and then in the end, he's like, you know what? Screw it. My eyes are gone. He takes the bone, puts the cross on it, throws it to well, Hellboy takes it and he's like, thanks. Starts hitting all the zombies and not even the witches, but just starts hitting all the undead. It's just a good action scene, but also shows that this guy is really committed to the priest, at least, is really committed to his belief.
Mhm. Yeah, I think my favorite part and moment is just after Hellboy attacks the Crooked Man, and you just have him like right after the blow, just being like, "Damn."
That is, if you like that scene, that's just in almost every comic book. It's just that one scene of Hellboy having his wind knocked out of him, and just that 1 second of, oh God, I gotta get up and do this again. This reluctant acceptance is just permeating through his character.
Yeah. What would you rate the book out of 10?
I'm gonna say, this might sound weird after all the praises, but a solid 7 out of 10.
Why would you say 7?
The art style was not my favorite, even though the praises and everything like that. Art style was not my favorite, and mostly just I can actually raise it up to a good like 8. But mostly the art style, the pacing was actually pretty good. That one section, like you said, made the how to make witch balls, threw you into it, and it's like, all right, here's this. And the pacing at the beginning of how did he end up in the Appalachian Mountains, which kind of annoyed me because it's very hard to explain. Like, oh yeah, so he's in the middle of the thing and he's starting the thing. He throws into how did he get in there? But granted, that's how a lot of them start. It's just more of the disparity between comic book artists where you get not only a different story, you get a different artist and he's in a different area. So you're thrown to 3 different loops all at once. So
Yeah.
I'm going to say raise my 7 to an 8. Art is very grotesque. That's one thing that I was saying before. Very detailed on the gore, while the baseline of Mike Mignola has that blood smear, shadows, your interpretation of the action. This one throws it at you, visceral.
Yeah, I'm in a solid 8, 9 range because I really don't have any gripes with this book. I would say from the start, I really got sucked into the story, and I really like Tom as kind of like our narrator, guiding us, and really like he's the one leading all of the dialogue, and Hellboy's just there for the ride, as I've said multiple times now. The only reason I wouldn't give it a 10 is like, is it the greatest story I've ever read? Is it like phenomenal? I wouldn't say it's like one of the best I've ever read, but it was a solid read and I really don't have any complaints. It was a solid story that I just found myself getting lost in, being like, wow, did not expect to enjoy this as much as I did. I
It didn't
thought,
overstay its welcome.
yeah, because, now we'll get into the movie a bit. The movie obviously pulls from this book, and for the most part, the movie is very comic accurate.
It's
Like
very faithful.
a lot of the dialogue is pulled straight from the book. And, when I had first seen some reactions to the movie, like, and especially to the trailer, I remember when the trailer first came out, people were like, this looks fan made. This looks like a fan made film. After watching the film, I could see why some might say that. However, I would say it doesn't feel fan made. It just feels more like a low budget indie, passion project kind of movie. Like it's not your big budget movie. It's more of just this small story. Maybe I wonder what the budget was for this movie. I'll look it up. But for the most part, very accurate to the book, and I respect that. If you can be comic accurate, to the point the movie was, that makes it a solid movie in my book. What were your thoughts first jumping into the movie?
Same. I'm actually very surprised at how comic accurate it was. It was almost verbatim, despite some extra characters. Um, things, which is props and everything wasn't very high budget. You can tell where they cut some corners. But again, I actually preferred this one to the previous one, which was was
The
it the
David Harbour one?
2019 one? Yeah, I
I haven't watched it.
if
I think I've
you're
seen
gonna
that
get
David
into it,
Harbour like says that he I mean, he hasn't really said anything too negative, but I remember seeing him talk at Comic-Con and a fan asked him, they're like, can you talk to us a bit about Hellboy? And he goes, "Oh, there's so much I want to say about Hellboy, but I don't, people write articles on the internet, so I don't want to get in trouble."
yeah, it's Hellboy was played portrayed well.
Well, David Harbour does a great job in like any role he's thrown into.
He you can't really fix writing on that one in the 2019 one, but in
Mm.
the current one, Hellboy also was played pretty accurate. He did have a little. He did seem a little bit angrier.
That's what I didn't like. I and I didn't know if that's like kind of what I think I said earlier is is that to appease or appeal to fans who kind of recognize Hellboy as like the Ron Perlman type who's like kind of gruff, kind of, has like that, hey, if you keep staring at me, I'm gonna punch you or whatever type. Because I remember that was like one of the first things, right? Like don't look at his horns or something. And it's like, Hellboy kind of starts threatening you if you do and this that. So I kind of whereas the comic he's very nonchalant and just along for the ride. The movie kind of felt more like, okay, I don't want to be here. Let's go, wrap it up. And I was like, all right, I don't really need that. What did you think of the beginning of the movie?
I
That's the biggest change from the comic
this is, I wouldn't even say that's the biggest, but it's weird how they kind of again, same with the comic. They throw you into it. They give you this whole thing, but it feels like they needed a reason
for
from
Hellboy to be in the forest.
that's the thing. They gave you this kind of half-assed reason, throw
Yeah.
you into it.
They're like he's on a train, he's transporting a giant demon spider
Here's two
or
new other
whatever.
characters.
Here's two new other characters, and one of those two new characters is gonna be in the movie for the whole movie, and they're not in the original book. You have no idea who this person is. They're basically like an analyst for the BRPD, and now they're also in the whole story alongside Hellboy, and I'm not really sure why.
It felt like they so that was the thing where the movie was very faithful to the comic book, but whatever was added extra, it's unfortunate because you remain very faithful to the comic book, but then you added these things that didn't need to be added.
It felt like it bogged down the story for me.
Yeah, and that's what's unfortunate about it. Like, yeah, I want to see more Hellboy comics. Not Guillermo del Toro, the original two, where you have these Hellboy, but they're their own stories. Then you have the 2019 one, which kind of threw a whole bunch of comic books, which is too unfortunate. Then you have this one, which remained very faithful, but these extra things of like, why did you add this into it when it didn't, like you said, bogged it down?
Yeah.
Didn't
They
need to be here.
they threw in the beginning to be like, all right, why is Hellboy in the middle of the forest? He was on a train transporting a spider. We're gonna add in another character who I guess was to show more of like I don't know, the scientific side of like here's what the BRPD does, because Hellboy is very much just going on this journey. I guess they were there to provide some more like I
I
don't
think
know,
it's like supposed to
wonder.
show the setting like 19 was it 1959, 1960
1959, yeah.
something, 1959. So I guess they throw this in to show like here's the beginning,
Yeah.
because like you said, Ron Perlman, everyone knows him. Now here's a new thing. Ron Perlman's one was modern day. This old one is now 1959 comic book accurate,
Yeah.
throwing you new characters, showing you, okay, here's how they are back then. Here's what we need, the analysts and all that stuff. Junior G Man.
Yeah. The other thing they throw in there is all the stuff with Hellboy's mom, where it's like your mom was a witch, and you have like all these dream sequences of like Hellboy imagining his mom burning in hell and this and
That's
that.
actually kind of comic accurate
But
if you read the other
not
ones.
for this mini series.
Exactly.
And that's where I felt like it was just kind of thrown in there and bogged down the plot because I'm like, in the comic, Hellboy's just along for the ride, but in this they really tried. It was almost like the people making the movie was like, all right, well, if we're making a Hellboy movie, we have to like
Make Hellboy the
pivot
center.
Hellboy the star. We can't just have it be Hellboy's along the ride with this guy Tom. Who cares about Tom? So they had to like find a reason for like Hellboy to like be the focus. And like they give him those Hellboy isms where it's like he's smoking a cigarette like every scene. In the comic, he doesn't light up one. He's just again there. But in this, it's like he's doing the Hellboy thing of like, give me a break. And he's like, throwing out one-liners like, that's one ugly thing I've ever seen, and like all that.
Yeah, it felt weird.
It
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 felt
felt
wrong.
it felt wrong for the tone, weirdly enough. Like they had this really, again, the comic and most of the movie has like this very like horror tone of like you said, the visceral feeling and everything. And then but the movie threw in more of the humor of Hellboy trying to be like, this guy over here. And it's like, all right, it kind of takes you out of it a little bit.
Well,
Not
that just happened
Yeah, it was like, all right, whatever. What else did they throw in here? They threw in exploring the mines under the mountain. That was like kind of a throwaway thing to kill Cora in the book, but in this we have to go into the mines where we kill the priest for no reason. We could have let him
with
live.
all the crows.
I mean, I did think it was neat that the priest also became a ghost and like led the side character, what was her name? Joe,
See,
out of the book.
yeah, it was
She
like
was,
Bobby Joe.
yeah. And so he leads. I thought that was neat, but like, I would have been fine if he just lived.
See, that was so
That felt like
remember
it was
how
in
I
there for
said in the
shock value.
comics? Yeah, the comics they gave you that okay. Like I said, comic books, was he real? Was he actually a human or was he a ghost, a spirit or something to help him out? In this one they just throw it away like okay, here he is, he was alive, he's dead now, but he's a ghost and Bobby Joe can see him now, and now she's a witch too.
Yeah, she was like that was like the other part of her being in the movie is that like she's practicing some witchcraft for research or to understand it
In
better.
order to be a witch, you have to think of the saddest thing you see, and then she
Yeah.
starts speaking German, and they kind of threw this.
Yeah, I didn't understand why she had a speech.
Yeah, they
I was
threw
just like,
this
okay.
whole. They threw this whole like. It feels like they tried to take like a three-part TV show
Yeah.
and smush them together while throwing the comic book in there. So they tried to if it was a three-part show,
I don't even
Tom would
think
be the
so.
center.
I felt like the movie was too long. Like the movie's an hour and 40 minutes with the credits. The credits are maybe 5 minutes because it's not much of a. I looked up the production budget. It actually hasn't been released. So don't know how much it
So
cost to make
low.
this movie. Probably low. The lowest Hellboy budget was the David Harbour one, which was 50 million. Before that, it was the first Hellboy with Ron Perlman. That was 60 million. And Hellboy 2, The Golden Army, that was around 80, 83 million. Um, so we don't know how much this one cost, but it did feel like they wanted to stretch it out. I feel like this could have been a solid like hour and 30, hour and 25, like one of those animated movies that like runs maybe a solid 70, 80 movie minutes and then you're done. Like it really, I feel like this could have been quicker because they also dragged out the final battle where rather than they have their big fight in the church, which I thought was great because like in the comic, it's a great fight. Hellboy's mostly like fighting people with his fists. In the movie, they do give him his gun and he's, guns blazing and everything. I thought it was a really good scene, really good fight. But then they're like, nah, but we still need the boss fight later. And so, yeah, they fight the Crooked Man in his mansion when in the book it's just we're wrapping up loose ends. We're just kind of sending him on his way. And so I don't know. I felt like that wasn't necessary. I feel like they could have easily just been like, all right, we defeated him with the shovel. Let's send him off and we're done. And that's the end of the story.
They also
What
got rid of the that one scene with Korra where she burst into all those bugs. They get the snake and they
Yeah, they
have the
replaced it with a
snake
snake, and like
like
Hellboy gets bit by the snake to have another dream about his mom, and like the crooked man's kind of puppeteering the dreams. It was weird.
yeah, like I said, it felt like they tried to add their own. It didn't work.
Yeah, no. I and like I could see why in reviews, especially for people who, I haven't read the comics, and probably most people who watch the movie, if they're just a Hellboy fan, haven't read the comics, saw the other movies. I could see why they would be like, "What is this? I don't care for this. Bring back Ron Perlman." Like I could see that being the reaction, but I'm happy that I watched it after reading the miniseries because I really do have the appreciation of how comic accurate it was because it really does feel like the pages come to life. But when you throw in that extra stuff, I'm just kind of like, all right, I don't think that was necessary. Like they even have that one scene where like, they're just sleeping in Cora's house and like Hellboy's just kind of there smoking a cigarette, like thinking about things. And I'm like, did we need this? We could have just gone through this. So, and oh, the other thing that I remember was really random, which I think that's why they were sleeping in the house, is in the comic, they find her familiar, the like beetle with wings or whatnot, and it's just like, oh, okay, the familiar, and they just kind of put it on the shelf and look at it for a second.
And it,
In the
it did
movie,
not
it
like it
breaks
didn't
out of
bark.
the jar and it bites Cora and she faints and this and that, and it was like, huh, that was weird. And also, I don't think in the comic Tom and Cora were really like a thing, while the movie kind of implied that they were like together. And it's that in the comic it was more like, oh, I knew her when we were younger. But in the movie it's like actually she was like my true love.
They added a
And
lot of unnecessary
yeah,
love things.
yeah. And there was a lot of like dialogue additions too that were just kind of like, all right. Like a lot of one-liners were added in there, mostly for Hellboy's benefit. And even like the final battle, I was kind of annoyed that Hellboy gets the killing blow. Like, because I like in the comic how it's Tom kind of absolving himself of getting rid of the cat's bone, and he's like, all right, here you go. And then the Crooked Man turns to dust, and like all the souls maybe get freed, maybe get sent to hell, who knows. But in this, it's he throws the witch ball and it catches the Crooked Man in the throat, and so he starts like reacting to it because it's kind of like
Coughing
this
up smoke.
let's avenge Cora, you know, hurrah. And then Hellboy has to get like the final, you know, move where it's like, all right, takes the gun, shoots him in the head, and like all the pennies burst out and like the souls are freed that way. And I was kind of like, all right, I don't think we really needed that. That was just to have a cool shot of Hellboy being like, sayonara, pal. And
This
there we go.
again, this is a Hellboy movie, so like you said, they had to focus
Yeah.
on Hellboy.
Yeah. And like yeah, and then they add in the final scene where like they get picked up by the BRPD in the helicopter and then Joe, I think that was her name, is like resting on Hellboy as if they're like together or something all of a sudden. I thought it was a lot of randomness. I do like that they at least kept the original comic ending of like they find the old version of Effie Cobb because since the Crooked Man's now gone, like her magic has kind of disappeared. And so they, use Tom gets revenge for his dad and puts the horse harness on her so she gets turned into a horse and like they paint on her like beware I'm a witch so people leave her alone. I did like that they kept that. Again, movie was very comic accurate. They just tacked some things on there. It was like, why?
The one thing that I did like that they added that I don't remember if it was in the comic book was when Hellboy picked up the shiny penny and handed it to Tom. That was a
That
good
wasn't in the
one.
comic because all the pennies had disappeared.
Yeah, that was a good little like listen, like I don't know what's gonna happen, but here you go. Here you're now in charge of your own faith now. Like that's the shiny
You
penny.
know what that kind of reminded me of? Remind me of what is it? Not Goodwill Hunting. Is it No Country for Old Men? The the one
Yeah,
the one with the
where
guy
you
who
keep your
flips the
quarter.
quarters.
Heads or
uh
tails.
Javier Bardem. It kind of reminded me of that scene with
Don't put it in your pocket.
the gasoline, yeah, the gasoline shop owner where he's like, "Well, hold on, that's your lucky quarter. Don't put that away." Kind of remind me of that. Where like, don't get rid of the penny. That's yours to decide now. That's kind of the vibe I got.
If they added
Um,
more of that to it, that would have emphasized. It would have made the comic book story better. Little things of Hellboy being like here's this, but unnecessary love tropes with Bobby Joe, I think.
yeah.
Unnecessary love trope with Cora and Tom
You know
and
what else
Hell.
confused me?
What?
Because we added in like the spider, we added in the
Yeah,
snake, we added these things in, right? We added in the giant bird in one of Hellboy's visions. And you know what I thought about? I went, huh, this is probably a really low budget movie. Why are we blowing some of the budget on like trying to make this CGI? Like the spider, the raccoon, you could tell everything was like low budget CGI. It very much had that sci-fi movie feel to it where it's like, a bit of a what is it? The frame rate is a little choppy and
a little bit
everything.
shinier.
Yeah, and I was just kind of like, really? We had to spend some of the budget on this spider? Like, if anything, in my mind, get rid of the spider fight scene. Also, get rid of the later spider fight scene because I just remember that the
Just get
spider
rid of the
comes back in
spider.
the top. Just get rid of the spider, right? Get rid of the snake. Get rid of the giant raven and all of these dream sequences, and whatever budget you used for those dream sequences just put it towards Cora getting her comic accurate death where she explodes into bugs. You don't even have to like show it. You could just show like the bugs, attacking them afterwards. Like
Candyman style, just all.
yeah, like cut away and like hear the explosion and then they're just getting attacked by bugs because they kind of did that to save money with the transformation from the horse to the father where it was they cut away and then all of a sudden Tom's holding the horse and his dad's laying before him. And it was like, "Oh, okay." Like I feel like they could have done something like that, but no, we had to put the budget towards Spider that we just felt like adding in there. I just felt like it wasn't necessary. Also, one thing that I don't know if you appreciated if you like horror, but they really dragged out the raccoon into the skin and filling the skin
It was
again.
flopping
Very
around,
grotesque and visceral. Like
trying to make it like
in the comic, it's like one or two panels, and okay, she's back. But in the movie, they really made that was like the real horror
she's
scene.
thrashing around and crying.
Yeah, yeah, I thought that was unnecessary. Like she screams out loud, like just to be like, this is horrific, in case you didn't already think so. It was like, all right. I mean, hasn't she maybe done this before if she's done this a few times? Um, so yeah, it was an interesting watch. I definitely think the comic was better. But I will give the movie props for also weird thing. The another change I noticed di in the book, like the whole thing that the story starts with is that Hellboy's kind of investigating this person who got attacked by witchcraft. In the book, I could have sworn that was somebody's daughter, but in the movie, they like just swapped it to somebody's son
Yeah, they just
instead.
threw that over there.
It was just a random like swap there. Not that it was anything necessary or big, but I was just kind of like, huh. I thought maybe that would hold more significance in the movie, and it just kind of didn't. But one thing that I will say, let me just find the panel because I want to. I will say this was a quick read, which was nice. It was just like a story you jump into, and that's it, and you're done. Here we go. Getting to the page. They're practicing witchcraft. They get to her house. Here we are. Yeah. Yeah, they did. Yeah, so I don't know why they changed it to a son. But anyway, the other thing, comic to movie. What did you think about the scene of how to make witch balls in the movie?
It they tried so much harder to make it a horror thing when in the comic book it seemed like a commercial break, like here kids, here's how to make witch balls, throwing you in there. It if you didn't know read the comic book, you have no idea why that was put in there.
Yeah.
So it felt not unnecessary because we were praising how much it was comic book accurate, but also it didn't add to the story. You technically could have taken that out. It
Yeah.
was cool that they brought it in for the people who like Hellboy, but weird because they kind of made into first you gotta take the bones and grind it up.
Yeah, and they added bits of dialogue and steps into there too. Like they were like, you have to do this and that. I'm like,
And they
that
showed
wasn't
it like
there.
here's the
Yeah.
guts of a black cat, and they showed the guts of the black cat. They showed the this, and they it was kind of cool, but it felt very much like a part
It
of a
felt out of
different.
place.
Yeah, it felt out of place. Even in terms of it being in the same movie, it felt more like a. I mean, this is technically a supernatural movie, but it felt like more like a ghost thing. Like, here's the flashback on how to do this.
Hmm.
Didn't need to put it in there.
Yeah.
Not good.
It almost made me think like did you see Venom the Last Dance when it came
I
out in
did
October?
not see Venom: The Last Dance.
Okay, that's fine. You don't have to. But
Thanks.
like they introduced Null in that. And in comics, like Null was this character that they built up from 2018 when Donny Cates and Ryan Stegman's Venom run started. And he got built up into a threat over the course of like 3 years so that when he finally showed up in the event King in Black and like he's the one attacking Earth, like he's a big deal. And they built him up, but in the movie, they literally open the movie with like just throwing you into here's Null. And it's almost like if you didn't read the comics, you would kind of be sitting there like, okay, um, I guess this is Null. Never heard of this guy before.
Cool.
Like, but if you've read the comics, you're like, yeah, I know who Null is. I know this stuff from the books, but like we're really just kind of throwing into this right now. Like it was like 3 solid minutes of exposition just jumping in. And that's kind of what the witch ball scene felt like to me. It was just like, all right, I guess we're just throwing this in there as some fan service for the comics, but also what a sidetrack.
You
What a
throw the
deviation.
pacing completely off.
Yeah. And like I could kind of appreciate like something I noticed about this movie that some movies do. Like I know the director's cut of Doctor Sleep did this. They do break the movie up into like 3 parts. They give you those title cards
I
of
did like
like
that.
it was neat and I was like, okay, we're getting different sections. Like I know one was like the hurricane, one was witch balls, and then like the other like I could understand the inclusion of it if it's like we're going scene section by section, but it's just I don't think the witch ball scene was necessary at all.
Did not like another thing that the movie did add that I did like is showing kind of Hellboy's supernatural healing,
Hmm.
where he gets stabbed by the spikes, he got bit. It kind of shows that he's able to withstand it. He's not
Yeah.
human. It's
And the
also
book did
probably
that too. I did like that we got him getting stabbed by like the picket fence stuff in both, and he was just kind of like, all right, just pull him out. We're good.
it's probably also just to cut off on the fact that he probably didn't have the prosthetics to show he got stabbed.
Yeah.
So they quickly covered it up, and the next scene he just has that one section covered with a little bit of blood.
Hmm.
But I
Or,
did
or
like
or
that.
he just pulled the coat a little tighter and was like, all right, don't worry
Here
about
we
it.
go. It's fine. But it did show that he's superhuman. He's
Hmm.
supernatural, and it kind of explains how he's able to get in those hits, even in the comic books where you don't get to see him heal.
Well, on the topic of the costume, did you like the look for Hellboy?
I I did like the look of Hellboy. I'm still gonna say that Ron Perlman's is number one because he's
Hmm.
got the job. He's
Hmm.
still better than the 2019 one by 100 yards, miles better, because he still has that physique. He's supposed to be just a bigger, he's just this bigger, heavier guy.
I think he
But
did a good job, the actor who was in the lead role. I think I forget his name. I think it might be Tom, ironically. Hellboy, Hellboy the Crooked Man, who
this
played him?
now, I just want to ask. I don't know if you noticed this in the show.
Jack, oh, that was long. Jack Kesy. Casey? Kesy.
Did he have an accent that you heard when you were watching the movie? Because in some scenes, it sounded like Hellboy had an accent.
Um,
Well,
I
the
didn't
actor.
I didn't pick up on anything. However, I do believe this actor. is from, I want to say he's from another country. Kesy studied acting in London. Yes, he does have an accent because I believe I think this guy was in yes, and I heard of this. The guy who plays Hellboy in this movie, you saw Deadpool 2, right?
Yes.
He played Black Tom Cassidy, the guy that is in jail with Wade, and he gets killed by Cable, and that's why Deadpool calls him racist for like the rest of the movie because he's like, "You killed Black Tom! How dare you?" So same guy who plays Hellboy.
Oh,
Um,
crossover.
and in Deadpool 2, I'm pretty sure he had an accent. So I'm pretty sure that like that might have just been like his natural voice slipping through.
I was gonna say I kind of if they kind of went in on that, that would have been cool a little bit because yeah, he's supposed to everyone's so focused on Ron Perlman, but the Hellboy does have roots in all different things like Scottish, Gaelic, and all this
Well,
other
they say
things.
they found him in Europe, in like a church in Europe.
So it would make sense. Even Professor Bromhelm, the old guy in the both things,
Hmm.
he's got an accent. So it would be cool, kind of cool of a different interpretation of not having Hellboy be an American, but maybe have a little bit of a different accent. I
Hmm.
kind of thought that was cool, not because of making fun of the actor, but like, oh yeah, that would make sense. He is not American. He's not American. He did grow up on a base though, but I like that.
Mm. But yeah, any other thoughts on the movie versus the comic?
It's unfortunate that the movie followed the comic book so good, but decided to throw in unnecessary stuff.
Yeah.
It could have been so much better. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
One, if we were to like, kind of like how I have my questions for like the comic, if we were to talk a bit about the movie, I will say, I think actor who played Tom knocked it out of the park. Think he was phenomenal. I think the actor who played Effie Kolb, she did a fantastic
She was
job
so good.
in the movie. She was phenomenal. Like,
I honestly really appreciated her acting.
yeah, she did an amazing job. She was a standout for me for sure. Um, but yeah, like I appreciate how the characters very much felt like their comic counterparts. Like this guy, Jack Kesy, did feel like Hellboy from the story when he wasn't,
Giving
delivering the
his little
witty
one-liners.
one-liners and giving us like the attitude, like because even they added like that unnecessary like protector stuff with Hellboy and Joe, where he's like, you know, we shouldn't be here. This isn't our business. Like you gotta go. You gotta go
I
home and
told you not
everything.
to go into the caves.
Yeah, like I didn't think that was necessary. And oh yeah, so her name was Bobby Joe Song. Um, but yeah, so in terms of that, if you gave the book about an 8, what would you give the movie?
5.
I'd say 5, 6.
Yeah, 5. Yeah, just a 5. Like it followed the book faithfully.
Yeah.
Unfortunate extra things that they had to add for the movie.
As a standalone movie though, I would say it was solid. It
Yeah,
got bogged down by a few things.
if you're a Hellboy fan, it's good. If you're not, you would not really appreciate it. You'd probably give it a little bit lower. So
But if
you
you had
did
the
good.
choice between seeing the original Guillermo del Toro with Ron Perlman or this one, which would you choose?
Guillermo del Toro, out of everything he's been, like I said, follow. You have the one-offs. Make movies one-offs on kind of things. Don't make this whole grandiose thing.
Mhm.
Don't throw a bunch of small stuff. One-offs are great. Make your own story. The comic books are already done. Have Hellboy do a different adventure already.
Mhm. Now, talking broader, would you want to see Hellboy adapted like into a show format similar to like Invincible or The Boys? Because like I do appreciate that we can get like animated projects. Because like honestly, if they were to adapt The Crooked Man into again like one of those DC animated movies where it's like a solid 70, 80 minutes and it's kind of true to the style of the comic, think that could have been really good.
They
Think that
did
could be
make
really
Hellboy
cool.
animated movies.
They did?
They have, I think, 2 or 3. I think it's 2 Hellboy animated movies, and I honestly, they have a different art style.
Hmm.
I
Hellboy
kind of,
Sword of Storms 2006 and Hellboy Blood and Iron 2007.
yes, I watched those. Um, they were good. I I always think that these longer comic books are better off having seasons, at least like a decent budget season, beginning, middle, and end. Don't overstay the welcome because these things have a lot of stories with a bunch of subplots in the background. So it's kind of unfortunate that you have to make these, like I said, the 2019 movie threw in a bunch of stories into one thing and it felt like a mishmash, an amalgamation of a bunch of stuff. Wouldn't work.
He did
If it
look
was
cool from what I saw.
who?
David Harbour as Hellboy. He did look cool.
Look, but if you watched it, you'll see that it really limits his acting
Hmm.
because the prosthetics live that's a different thing. That's a different topic, but it limits his facial movement, but that's besides
Hmm.
the point.
I
So
heard that
yeah,
was a criticism that he couldn't really express a lot.
if they did have to make a animated thing 100%, it would be so good just hearing bring back Ron Perlman if you have to, but the
How
stories,
old is Ron Perlman now?
yeah, I mean, he can't lose his it's that
He's
would be even
74. Wow. For some
wouldn't
reason,
that
I
be
thought he was
easier for him
older
though?
though. I think animation would be easier for him. Yeah, definitely. And I
Bring
do
back
think he would come back to do it.
Yeah, they have I think Mike Mignola had a little short with called like the Incredible Screw Off Head,
Hmm.
and it follows his art style and it's animated too.
Hmm.
So that means it's a possibility. You could do it. Would it be picked up? Probably not. Would I see it if it did? 100%. I think that would work a lot better than having these movies.
Hmm. Yeah, I feel like live action, especially today, gets very limiting in like the story you can tell. Because even though, you can make it more realistic and this and that, I feel like it does limit you as opposed to how like animation, you can really do anything. Same with, that's why I love comics because really all you're limited by is your imagination and the artwork. That's about it. You could tell any kind of story. Um, Animation, you're able to carry a lot of that over. But obviously, for movies, you have to take into account, you know, CGI. How are you going to do these practical effects? Are we going to have to edit things in post, etc.? And I feel like this movie, again, especially for the low budget, kind of got bogged down a bit by adding in a giant spider.
It might have actually, exactly. It helped
Yeah.
that it was low budget because they used a lot of the dark scenes that kind of hid the stuff.
Yeah.
And the same in the comic books. It's unfortunate that they felt they had to add just to be a movie, just to be different.
Hmm. Yeah. So you could get those big action scenes. Yeah. Any last minute thoughts before I
Yeah.
do my lovely outro script that I also still don't have memorized?
No, I mean, I think we've gotten through many points. If we want to spend another episode talking about Hellboy or any of these dark horse comics, I'd see what I can do. But besides that, I think we've pretty much spoken mostly about the Crooked Man.
Yeah, that was The Crooked Man. Light read, good read, movie. You know, watch it if you wish. I
If you're a
I
Hellboy fan, watch it just to say you watched it. Better
I
than the
maybe wait
2019.
for it to go on Prime or something because I rented it and I'm
It's
like,
already on Prime, I think. Oh
I'm like
no.
$6. Ooh. Um, but anywho, I'm gonna do this outro script here then. So, Charles, and to the listener, thank you once again for visiting your local Comic Con. If you liked today's discussion, please feel free to check out other episodes we've done. All episodes of the podcast are available on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and SoundCloud, with new episodes dropping every Monday at midnight. Please feel free to subscribe to the show and follow my socials at Local Comic Con for clips, what we're reading in the future, and more fun. If you'd like to support the show, I encourage you to subscribe to our Patreon to gain access to behind the scenes content and other resources for both reading and digital creation. Thank you so much again for visiting, and I'll see you the next time. Any parting words, Charles?
Have a good day. Have a good night. Enjoy.
Okay, awesome. And we're out.